Hey guys, I'm Sai, and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation, and welcome to the Danny Batten Fight Show, episode number 21. Fresh off the back of our first live show last week, we are back for another recorded show. But do not fear, because we will be back live again on Friday evening at 6 o'clock with another special guest, analyst. Is that even a word? Analyst, I don't know.
Sounds good.
Special guest is coming again for Friday's live show, which I'm sure we'll tell you about in a bit. Today we are going to talk UFC Fight Night from last night, or from Saturday night, because this is going to go on Wednesday. We're also going to talk a bit of UFC 7.5. Technically, it's not UFC 8. It's called the Ultimate from 1995, with some very familiar names and some old classic no rules UFC, groin strikes and all. And and then we'll also be doing part 3 of our look into the rise of Jack Shaw through the Cage Warriors ranks. I think it's the third fight we've looked at, which is it's quite interesting. Joining me, as usual, former Cage Warriors champion and UKMMA legend, Mr. Danny Batten. How are you, my friend?
Music to my ears every time, Si. I'm good.
Legend. And of course, we have another special guest, analysis assist giver, and that is UFC lightweight Modestas Bukauskas. Cash. I can't say it, mate. I've tried so many times.
I just think I'll point. I just think I'll point out as well.
His sound's gone. Where's your sound gone?
Oh.
Hear me?
Yeah, you're back again. You got a loose connection.
I don't know, mate. These loose connections keep happening all the time. I don't know what's going on.
Right. So what did you say?
I was saying, so I think I'm a bit heavy for lightweight, light heavyweight, but I think you said lightweight. But it's all good. I like to think of myself as a bit of a lightweight. How you doing, mate? You all good?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I wrote on the underneath you. It says light heavyweight, and I'm staring right at it, but I still said lightweight. Must have been our pre-show conversation.
It's the chiseled chin, chin, and the sexy abs. That's what it is.
It's the lockdown physique.
Yeah, that's it.
Everybody else has been piling on the pounds, but you've just been like shredding them.
It's that one spinach leaf a day diet. It's working out well.
So we're going to talk last night's UFC anyway, but in a minute. But Modestas, how's lockdown been for you?
It's actually been a good experience. I've been able to work on certain things that I haven't been normally been able to do, like during fight camp. But it's funny, everyone talks about fight camp or training camp or whatever, but I'm always sort of training. I'm always trying to improve and sort of learn new things. So it's been actually a blessing in disguise, because it means that I've just been able to work on all the moves that, we've been training out at BST, all the stuff that my dad's been doing. Like, nothing changes for me. I'm very fortunate as opposed to some other fighters. I've got a gym at home. So literally just goes straight downstairs and boom, I've got my gym right there. My dad does my strength and conditioning, he does my pad work, he does my game plan stuff along with Danny. And then, like all the stuff, I've got one training partner that comes and trains with me, and we like go over all the moves that I've been practicing in class. And then another day in the week, I've got my other training partners from Northampton, and we just come and do like some grappling sparring and stuff. So realistically, I'm going to be coming out of quarantine probably an even better fighter than I was coming in. So, and that's what you always want. I think you always want to obviously be looking to evolve, get better. Look, I'm trying to learn a bit more Lithuanian. I'm trying to work on my dance moves just in case, the opportunity arises. So it's good. Listen,
gotta be ready.
I think this is a great thing for everyone to try and just work on yourself. And like I say, I'm very fortunate and grateful that I've got like loads of amazing people around me and the resources available to go and, you know, better myself. And so obviously I've got to be ready, because as soon as the call comes, I've got to be ready to go. So obviously I'm itching for my UFC debut. So can't wait.
Yes, and I guess like you mentioned, not all fighters are in that same position, so they might be struggling to get a work in as best, you know, as much as they would like. So you are lucky in that point. So hopefully, when the call does come, it'll be sooner rather than later, because you won't have to perhaps kind of like when we spoke to Brett Johns the other day. He said, you know, he's itching to fight, but equally he wants to do himself justice, and he would want, you know, a fight camp behind him before he would be able to commit to it. But obviously he's not in the position at the moment where has been able to train to the same level that what he's used to on a daily basis. And it makes a difference then, doesn't it? So
yeah.
Any news at the moment in regards to like your debut in the UFC?
So what I'm allowed to say is that, so May 16th, I had a fight booked.
Okay.
I can't say what the opponent is, but we're hoping to get that fight rebooked. And all the fighters, we had a conference call with Dana White, which was actually pretty cool, just seeing Dana White on the screen. Actually, like, obviously he wasn't talking to me personally, but at the same time, the fact that he was in a room with like all the other UFC fighters and you got Dana White right there, I was just like, do you know what I mean? It's my boss right there. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, like explaining everything to us, he said that as the events were planned out before, like as the events go like in order, that's who's going to have like the first come first serve sort of basis. So I'm probably going to be matched, or hopefully I'm going to be matched quite early on the Fight Island cards. So we're looking at, you know, end of June, early July, something like that. So that's what I'm, you know, sort of projecting. That's what we're hoping for. At the end of the day, whatever happens, we'll sort of be ready. It all really as well sort of depends on like the travel situation and stuff like that. But I think,
yeah, of course,
for a while the sporting events are not going to be going like, you know, full swing. So we'll see what happens. But we're looking at end of June, early July, something like that.
I did read, I think it was yesterday, in one of the papers that maybe sporting events, like, because they want to get them up and running as quick as possible, they may have slightly different rules for traveling via airplane and stuff, which will obviously help massively for not just you but Cage Warriors guys, because Cage Warriors is now exclusive to UFC Fight Pass. Obviously UFC want to get the Cage Warriors shows on as well, which means that if they do sort out the Fight Island shows, they could potentially have Cage Warriors shows there as well, if they can get the fighters over from Europe to do it. You did mention there that you're still working on your dance moves. Does that mean that we're gonna go down the Strictly Come Dancing to go along with the Take Me Out stuff as well?
Who knows? Whatever sort of opportunity comes my way, I'll be ready for whatever the situation. You know what I mean? Whether it be Strictly Come Dancing or, well, I don't know what other shows there are out here that you know have it all down. But don't worry, I'll be practicing. I'll be getting all the YouTube, like, you know. Have you ever seen these TikToks that these people are doing nowadays?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, my kids love them.
Sound like I'm an old man saying that. But anyways, so yeah, we've got they've got all these TikToks, all these people like doing dance moves, and I'm just like, in my room, I'm like looking at it like I'm stunned. Like, okay, so how's he moving his arm? How's he doing it? And people are just having a laugh with it. So, but we'll see. Give it a couple of months, you know, couple of moves a day, and then who knows? We'll bang it all together, and then next thing you know, me and Danny are going to make a little BST music video.
There you go. Well, you know, like I've got a YouTube channel. You've got a YouTube channel. It seems like it's only right that the next person to have their own YouTube channel would be Danny, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm just wondering what would the focal point of, you know, of his videos would be.
Like, yeah, what would the content be? I wonder.
Fighting, you know.
You know exactly what it would be, Modesta. You know exactly what it would be.
Oh my god.
So Yeah, so Danny, how have you been, mate, this week? What's your week been like?
Yeah,
Even though
been
I
good.
spoke to you on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I always stay busy. I know lockdown's seen a lot of people have a lot of time at home. Although I have had my moments at home, most of my time is spent out still working and grafting. There was still a lot of work to be done in the gym. So I've been going along doing that. Obviously, I'm the only one there in the gym at any one time. So it's not like I'm having to force to be rubbing shoulders with people, because obviously that's against the rules. But I do go in and still do some work around the gym that needs to be done. And I'm trying to make ends meet other ways as well, which I think is a big struggle for a lot of people that were in my similar situation. I went from earning money to earning nothing. So I've had to try and find ways to sort of scrape by, but I'm getting by, I'm a survivor. I'll be okay. And Daddy's always there for me. Thanks, Dad.
So, right, Dan, what did you think just overall of last night's UFC Fight Night?
Yeah, there was some good fights, some ones that I really enjoyed. Yeah, it was not like a super special one. I think we kind of been spoilt with that one. But it was good viewing. I wasn't bored by any stretch watching it. One of the favourite bouts for me is the women's match. You know how fond I am of the women's matches. I think they're really, really good. This was really competitive. It was hard to know who was going to win that one at the end of it. But we'll talk more about that as and when it comes along. But the women, for me, they're just technically all good. They're all really, really good and all very, very equal in any given area. It's great viewing.
Yeah, I think so. I thought this one was more enjoyable than Wednesday's show. I thought Wednesday's was hard work to watch, I gotta be honest.
Okay.
There was like one or two fights on the Wednesday show, which I really, really enjoyed. But then the ones which weren't great were really difficult to watch. Whereas this one, I watched it all, enjoyed most of them. And I went back and watched it. Even though we stick to the main cards generally, I went back and watched some of the prelim fights, and some of the prelim fights are actually better than the main card. The Matt Brown fight particularly was really enjoyable. Modestas, what did you think of the just overall of the show? Like,
I thought they had like Danny said, I thought there's some good fights. I thought that was a very competitive women's fight there. I thought there was a couple of officiating errors. I mean, listen, that's just in my eyes. I understand. Obviously, it's different when you're sort of in there and like officiating yourself, obviously. But I feel like some of the referees judging for some of the fights, you could have said it went the other way. So there's a couple of decisions like that on the main card that they had, and then. In the main event as well. I think as well, if you saw in the Anthony Smith fight, I mean, the geezer is literally handing his teeth to the referee inside the cage, and the referee's like, "Yeah, sure, just keep hitting him." And I'm just like, "Listen, there's some decisions which are a bit premature, and obviously they're trying to not get into that sort of." Or trying to move away from having premature stoppages, but at the same time, you can't let a guy get his head smashed. Literally standing up, and he's all wobbly, and he can barely walk. And the guy's like, "Yeah, nah, we'll go until he's knocked out." You know what I mean?
Well,
so,
sorry to interrupt you there, mate.
No worries.
We talked about this a bit on Thursday as well. It's like the consistency of it all. Like, you want it to be consistent for every fight, so every fighter knows where they stand. Where if it gets to kind of this point where you're wobbling or whatever, whatever it may be, whatever the kind of cutoff point is, if you like, it needs to be the same for everyone. And then we said, I can't remember if it was either with Richard on Thursday, Richard Shaw, or it might be with Brett, where we said, do you give certain fighters more leeway because they can take a punch? So I think it was with Brett, wasn't it? Because it was with the Tony Ferguson fight, where I asked the question to Danny and Brett, whereby, right, because Tony Ferguson can take a beating and then still beat someone from on his back or wherever it may be, does he get more leeway than someone who maybe has been knocked out before and gets a bit wobbly when they get hit on the chin? Should they get, should it be different for each one, or should it not just be the same, whereby there was a few points in the Tony Ferguson fight where I felt like it could have been stopped. And there was in the Matt Brown fight, there was arguably a point just before Miguel Baiza won at the end of round one, where you could argue that Matt Brown probably could have had a stoppage win. And it's I
think there's been a bit, in my opinion, I think there's been a bit of a wave of sort of good officiating and sort of not so good officiating, or they've sort of tried to determine when is a good time to stop it, and they've had a lot of times where there's a lot of people been complaining that there's been too many early stoppages, but then they try and correct that or eradicate that particular error, and then it goes on for too long and stuff like that. I think, I think in terms of level of importance, I think if it's a title fight or a main event or whatever, then yes, maybe you could say it should go on a little bit longer, just because they're fighting for a very important fight. But at the end of the day, I think the main priority obviously should be fighter safety. Listen, if the guy is trying to defend himself, then, and especially for a main event fight, you should let him try and defend himself. But if he is literally out on his feet, getting absolutely wobbled, that's, brain trauma and all sorts of other problems that are going into it. I mean, yeah, it's a fight at the end of the day, you sort of, it's good for the crowd and stuff like that. But when it gets to that point where the guy's literally, Glover Teixeira in that fight was literally telling her, I'm sorry about this.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know what I mean? It's mad. So
and he switched. Sorry again to interrupt. He switched, he switched, didn't he, again, whereby he was beating Anthony Smith so badly that in the end he stopped hitting him. Because I went back and watched it after the show, which we did on Thursday, because I asked Richard the question, and Danny, did he, because he likes Anthony Smith and their friends, did he stop hitting him and start trying to grapple with him and submit him because he knew he was hurting him and he knew he'd won the fight? So he just kind of went to grappling to do no further damage. And we kind of speculated that maybe that was the case. And I went back and watched it again. And I really believe that was the case, because it was not long after he apologized to him and said, look, I'm really sorry. It's just, it's just, this is the job kind of thing, to where he was comfortably winning the fight, looking like he was going to finish it, to then just laying on the floor, not even really pushing for a submission, just kind of grappling. And I think if a fighter's taking that into his own hands, whereby he's trying to protect his opponent, then maybe the ref's got to step in at some point there. But I think I definitely agree with you, because it was definitely visible, like you said, that he was sort of slowing down a little bit, because he could have easily just went in on the ground and pound. Even when he was on top on Mount in that last little sequence, he could have easily started raining down some shots, but he just little pity pat shots just to show that the guy's just not defending himself. That's it. That is the problem. I think when a fight is literally just shelling up and not doing anything, he's not intelligently defending himself. So that should then cause a stoppage. There was a lot of times like that. He's literally just helpless, can't defend himself.
Yeah.
So I think that's when.
Don't you think though, that just possibly? And this is what I've been thinking. I've been trying to scratch my head about what this situation is that's going on with the refereeing. You've got to wonder whether it's the fact that there's no crowd there. Because if you imagine that these shots were going in and the crowd are like, oh, it might give that urgency to the ref. But instead the ref's like, do I, don't I?
Yeah.
Sometimes refs almost get pushed along by the reaction to the crowd. Maybe that's what's going on here. It's, that's just something that I might go in with the mix of what's happening here. It's just really, really hard to know.
The other side of that as well with the crowd is as those shots come in, say in the Anthony Smith fight, you'd have got a lot of kind of oohs and ahs from the brutality of them. But then maybe from some of the other fights we've seen over the last week, where it looks like there might be a finish, everyone would have been up off their feet. The volume would have gone up. The crowd would have been louder. So then the referee almost gets taken along with the momentum of that as well. It's kind of interesting point, isn't it? Okay, did you watch the Matt Brown fight, Danny?
Yes, I did.
The prelim. Did you watch that one, Modestas?
Yeah, I did too.
Okay, cool. So it's a weird fight, man, because I thought Matt Brown looked real impressive in that first round. Some of the combinations he was hitting were really good, really quick, powerful, 3-4 punch combinations. And he had Baiza really, he kind of rocked him in that. I think it was towards the end of the first round. And I thought, oh, here we go, he's going to finish this. And the ref let it go. And then Baiza kind of got to his feet and he got himself together a little bit, and then they paused to pick up the mouth guard, And then by the time he got his mouth guard and they finished the round, and then obviously he came out in the second round, cracked him with a couple of nice shots. And even then, Brown hit another combination at the start of the second. And I was just impressed with Brown's the speed of his combinations. Like as soon as he hit that first punch, he followed it up straight away, which is obviously vital when it's heavyweight, wasn't it, this fight? Yeah. But what did you make of the Matt Brown Miguel Baiza fight, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a massive fan of Matt Brown. I think he's a fighter that's fights with pure IQ. But of course, to broaden that IQ spectrum, you've got to have a lot of tools to throw in. And this guy's got a lot of tools, and not just his standard techniques. He comes in with some diverse combinations. He's very, very creative. And always seems to be doing what the opponent doesn't want him to do. He's always keeping himself in the mix, even when he's on the receiving end. He could always, suddenly do a spinning elbow, a nice emphatic takedown because his ground's top notch. He could be on his back and scramble up into a dominant position. He's really, really creative. You did see some of that again in this fight. I just wonder whether, reaching 39 years of age now and getting rocked a little bit a little bit easier than he had previously done in any of these other fights. So you've got to wonder whether the miles have notched up on his clock, and we may have seen him past his best now. And for his own legacy and his health and safety, you've got to wonder whether he should perhaps put up his gloves. Not to say that's a horrendous performance, but he did get rocked, and his reactions were definitely slower. Now, that could also be to do with the fact that we're going through this unusual COVID situation, and maybe he hasn't been on his training, and he needs his sparring to stay sharp, and he hasn't got that in this time. But something was amiss with him. As much as he was creative, as much as he nearly put the guy away, he definitely was reacting slow to those leg kicks, and he was getting hit and rocked very, very easily. And that was a worrying sign for me for Matt Brown. But other than that, I've always been a massive fan of him.
Yeah, I see. What about you, Modestas? What did you make of this one?
I think Danny sort of hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, it just seemed that, he's been in some crazy wars. He's been some really, sort of interesting fights and stuff like that. And obviously with the damage, even the fights when he does do well, like he's obviously still accumulating damage and, going 39 now and stuff like that. And even like, what's that, welterweight, I think. So it's like,
yeah.
It's sort of like the mid-tier sort of weight class. It's usually only really the heavyweights that go on to like their 40s and can still sort of push and do well. But yeah, listen, he's got a very diverse skill set. It's crazy because I'm pretty sure he trains in Colorado. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like all of those guys who train with that coach over there, they seem to put up these combinations, like, adding the elbows, adding like these sort of leaning kick type moves, which is actually like really nice, and the way that he adds it into the fight is like really cool actually. But listen, the other guy, obviously he was undefeated as well, so he was a very strong sort of competitor in that fight. And when he smelt that there was damage, obviously he went in for it. So he I guess maybe sort of that added little pressure maybe gave him a little bit of a spark to sort of push the pressure when he sort of hurt him. So but like Danny said, Matt's always an entertaining fighter, and he puts on a great show, and shows like some really diverse skill sets. But who knows? It might be sort of towards the end of when he can actually to take a shot. You never want to take a shot, but it was an interesting fight either way though.
He's never been UFC champion either, has he? I think it's always eluded him. He's just like the fighter that always should have been but never was. It's just always just slipped out of his grasp. But yeah, he's one fighter that really should have had the title at some point, but it's just never happened for him.
I think it's similar to Donald Cerrone actually, his sort of position. Yeah. Like, very good fighter, beat some amazing guys, but always when it got to that fight that will either get him the title or get him closer to fight, or he would lose that, and then he'll come back and win another fight, but then lose on another important fight. That's another crazy thing in the game, isn't it? Like, you sort of, as much as it, like, you sort of have to win at the right time as well. So,
sure.
That's another big part of the game.
he's got a hell of a thing here. Just looking at, he's got fight of the night 3 times, knockout of the night on 1 occasion, performance of the night 2 times, most knockout wins in UFC history, welterweight division, and second most in UFC history, and most finishes in UFC welterweight history. I mean, that's an incredible accolade to not become the champion. That's just incredible.
Yeah.
Crazy record that is. But yeah, that's an interesting comparison you made, Modestas, to Cerrone, because you're right. Like, he'll have these amazing fights, these wars, take a lot of damage, but also, you know, beat some top guys, go on little runs of, you know, 3 or 4 fight win streaks, and then when it comes to that big fight, either, like, I think in Cerrone's case, he's often, I don't want to say bottled it, but like, he's had a problem when the big fight has come. He's never quite performed when it really been on the line, if you like. Not to say, you know, I'm not in any way implying that he's like, you know, bottled it, but what I mean by that is when it's come to that really, you know, this is the time to put on your best performance. You know, he hasn't always done that, and I think, you know, maybe you could say the same about Matt Smith as well.
Oh, Matt Brown, yeah.
Sorry, Matt Brown.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. It's weird because Donald Cerrone is a bit of a slow starter. I mean, he always says that about himself, but it's true. I mean, it seems like he needs like that round to sort of feel the pace, because it's weird. I mean, you look to I think his first fight of Anthony Pettis, he had that bit of a slow start, and then Anthony Pettis was sort of coming in with like the big strike. But then you look at the second fight, it's a completely different story. Like, you know, it seemed like he saw. But Matt Brown, I personally have never seen him to be a bit of a slow starter. Like, he's been a bit of a different, like, and it's funny because they strike very sort of similarly. They've got like a lot of like similarities about each other. But yeah, I do think it's crazy because he's got like quite good like length for a welterweight as well. But yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's a fight. It's a volatile situation. There's loads of crazy things happening. You can never really, you know, 100% predict, because next thing you know, one punch could land, and, you know, things could be like, you know, it could change the complete shape of the fight. So, you know, I think he's done really well. I mean, in a fighter's eyes, though, you got as well look at it this way: they never want this whole roller coaster to end. I mean, listen, I don't even want to get anywhere near to thinking about the whole retirement thing, but it's like when that like sort of question starts rolling up, it's like, imagine being in that precious situation. You're put out in front of all these people, you're put there and that. It's like, how can you say no to being out in the spotlight, to being, you know, there? And it's like, you know, and then after that, like, even, you know, with Chuck Liddell, absolute amazing fighter, Hall of Fame, this and that. But, you know, then it's hard to stay relevant afterwards because time's consistently always like moving forward. So that, you know, you always want to be there. You want to have that experience. You want to have that adrenaline rush. It's like, it's stuff that's like a drug. You know what I mean? Like, every time I go into a fight, it feels like, it's like you become addicted to that feeling. So for Matt Brown, who knows? He might have a couple of fights and decide, you know, because I'm guaranteed he's probably with all those, you know, awards and stuff like that he's had, he's probably made quite a decent bit of money and stuff like that. Because that's another thing hard for fighters. You know, once you finish your career, what's going to happen after that? You know, what are you going to do? Like, have you invested your money properly and this and that? So, but look, I mean, if he does continue to fight, I mean, I guess it'll be a case of, you know, just having to, I guess, work on a bit more on head movement or something like that. But like I say, his combinations looked beautiful. Like, it was definitely a work of art I saw in that fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, on a different day, that fight could have, you know, those combinations could finish another fighter. And you're talking about what a great performance that was. And
or with a different ref, he may have got the win in the first round.
That's another thing, yeah.
There's all sorts of like aspects to it, isn't there? And I mean, at the end of the day, you know, some, like, I don't want to say it's luck, but on any given day, anyone, you know, can get nailed by a head kick or a punch or a combination, get KO'd, and it's a completely different look to how the fight could have been. Like, how many times have we seen a fight end at the end of the 3rd round or the 5th round with a fighter being up on, you know, convincingly on the cards, and then the other fighter, you know, KOs them, submits them, finishes them out of the blue, and the whole performance looks different, doesn't it?
As soon as you said that Chael Sonnen versus Silver.
I remember that fight.
Yeah, it was. It was 5 rounds, wasn't it? Yeah, it was right. I mean, I think he won every round. Was just ground and pounding him all the way through, and got tapped out. I can't remember exactly how long was left. But he wasn't very long.
I think it was a minute left in the last round.
Oh, gutted, absolutely gutted.
Crazy.
That feud or that run of matches was kind of the end of Chael Sonnen in terms of being that main draw, because he had built his reputation on not just talking but winning, and then talked so much about Anderson Silva, and then obviously.
Yeah, Chael Sonnen's a cool guy. I met him at a restaurant when I was out in America, and he's with a table. Cool. Yeah, and he's with loads of other other big name guys. But I'd met a lot of the other people, and just went over to introduce myself. I had no qualms in spending a few moments having a chat with you. So it's not just like hello, have a photo. You actually ask about what you do, and it's really good meeting him. Full of energy, the guy seems as well. But, always spent time with anyone that took interest in him. So fair play to him for that much.
I always enjoy his. He used to do that show, didn't he, on Fox? Like you would probably call a podcast, I guess now, where he would interview different fighters and stuff. And I find him quite enthralling to listen to. Just his the way he captivates you, doesn't he? With the way he speaks and.
He talks very, very well. He's got his own YouTube channel now, hasn't he? And I occasionally listen to him. He'll talk about up-and-coming fights that have been, and gives his opinion on it. The guy is very analytical. He's an intelligent dude, and for the most part, he sees things as they really are. So I've got a lot of respect for Chael Sonnen.
Yeah, I like pundits or analysts, whatever you want to call them, who give honest opinions, not just trot out cliches or like what the companies they work for would what they want to hit them to say. I much prefer listening to guys who will give their opinion. Just much more interesting and much more enthralling, whatever you want to say. Okay, so let's move on to the next fight, which was Song Yadong versus Marlon Vera, ranked 13 versus 14. At bantamweight. I thought this was quite an interesting fight. They're both quite fun to watch. I think I read somewhere. I might have got this mixed up, but I'm sure I read that neither one of these guys have actually, since they've been in the UFC, have finished a fight, and they've all gone to decision. But that might be wrong, so don't quote me on that. I'm gonna check that out now just to see.
Yeah.
But they both looking for the finish, but it didn't come. Modestas, what did you make of round one?
Well, I mean, the fight as a whole, Vera done really well in the clinch from what I saw. That's where he was winning most of the exchanges. He was landing off some really good strikes from the clinch, especially with the elbows, the short shots, and stuff up against the cage. He was doing really well. I mean, in my personal opinion, I think it was. I guess you could say the decision as a whole shouldn't have really went that way. If you look at it, even Vera, managed to get takedowns as well. So, and he was winning the exchanges. You know what I mean? Like he did a very good thing about closing the distance and getting in a good range for him to land his strikes. Whereas Sadong, I think he was used to sort of being a bit more on the outside, but Vera made it like a very gritty, sort of dirty boxing type fight, and I felt he was landing more shots, he was controlling it on the ground, and then next thing the other guy got the nod. So I thought but like I say, it was very similar through all rounds. Like I said, he was getting the clinch exchanges. That's where he was really just seemed to be overpowering the other guy. Just completely just getting in and landing those dirty boxing shots. It looked really good, and there's a perfect game plan to go in against that guy who's quite explosive.
Yeah. What about you, Dan? For that first round, what did you make of it?
I'm glad you agreed with me with this actually, because I thought the same. I thought Marlon won it just because he's being more diverse. I do think Song was landing a little crisper when he did land. He definitely had nice hands and that on him. But for me, Marlon was being more varied. He was still landing almost equally, so not quite as crisp, but he was kicking, he was clinching, he was kneeing, and it was almost like Song was relaxing on his laurels towards the end of each round, which just didn't look like he was really trying to take the round at every moment. Whereas Monvera looked like he was trying to take the round at any opportunity he could. He just dug deeper for me, and I feel like that become a pattern that you saw each round, and I was really stunned, and Oliveira looked really gutted and was not happy at all. I don't think he wouldn't shake the guy's hand, which ain't his fault. But each round was really, really close, without a shadow of a doubt. But nevertheless, I do think the in-boxing and the stepping out with those elbows, the little knee shots, okay, they didn't add up to much, the knee shots, but it was still work rate. The fact that he had Songs back up against the fence when there was clinching up, I just felt like he was just edging it for me each round, and I don't know how it went against him, but it did.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you can see why fighters get frustrated with decisions like that, and he was visibly furious. He didn't shake Song's hand, which is not a great look. You've got to. I know it's easy for me to say as someone who's not a fighter, but I've played, sport to a fairly decent level. And whether you win or lose, no matter how you win or lose, you've got to take it on the chin, say congratulations and suck it up. Because at the end of the day, it's not, Song didn't, he didn't make the decision. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't cheat. He didn't, whatever you want to say. It was a judge's decision, and when it goes to the judge's decision that you run that risk of it going it's in your opponent's favor. Modestas, what's it like? Have you experienced having a decision go your way where you felt very strongly that you've won the fight?
No, actually, funny enough. I mean, if you look at most like my pro wins, so out of 10 wins, I've got 9 finishes.
Okay.
Realistically, it's more like I'm looking back at these fights, like the Hamlet fight, for example, and I watched it back as you do, and obviously my dad's watched it already a million times back. But you see that they all were like, I was down on the scorecards for 3 rounds. I'm like, really? Like, imagine if that fight would have went 5 rounds. Most likely, even if I would have put on like because the 4th round I was clearly winning. If I would have done that same pressure on the 5th round, he got no takedowns. I was landing shots, but I didn't finish him. It probably would have went the other way. So it's really weird. It's really hard to sort of understand sometimes what the judge's criteria is. I know 100%, for example, in that fight, I lost the 1st round without a shadow of a doubt. But again, 2nd round, oh yeah, he held me up against the cage a little bit. Did he land any shots? No. When it got into the strike exchanges, I was landing. So I think every judge is going to have a different sort of viewpoint. I mean, they can have, like, in their head, they're going to be thinking, okay, if this guy's doing this or that, because I think a lot of it nowadays, or like it seems like now everyone's gearing more towards landing damage as opposed to before it was a bit more about control and pressuring, whereas now it seems like there's a bit more of an emphasis on damage. So like from what Danny said, the shots being a bit crisper, maybe that's what sort of forced the judges to give it into Song's sort of direction. I mean I'm not too sure, but yeah, with my experience, listen, I am looking to finish a fight. I mean, I understand I'm not going to get the finish all the time. I hope I don't have to be in that position. But at the end of the day, I think if you're looking at the fight back and sort of everyone sort of agrees with it, at the end of the day, you just got to take what you can from it and use that to sort of better yourself for your next fight. You know what I mean? I understand it's a very emotionally hard thing to, especially when you you pretty much in your head, you felt like, oh my gosh, how the hell, like there's no way I'm going to lose this fight, and then they give it the other way. It is quite devastating. But I think, you know, as a fighter, that, you know, if you're going to have a long sort of career, you just got to think, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and let's try and make it so that we don't have the situation again, which obviously is going for the finish. I mean, listen, you can't force anything, but, you know, I think at that point, there's some fighters who, you know, I guess, you know, with the Jones and Reyes fight, I mean, listen, Reyes didn't really, he wanted to, you know, sort of run around a little bit for the last 2 rounds. And then, you know, a lot of people were skeptical about why did they give it to Jones? But in reality, you look at the last 2 rounds, Jones was putting the pressure on him. And then if with one of those other rounds where it could have went either way, or, you know, someone landed a little bit more strikes here or there, you know, at the end of the day, it's, I think, with judging, it's just difficult, like I said, because you don't know what that particular judge on that particular day is going to be thinking. There's so many different elements that go into it. But listen, as devastating as it is, as a fighter, you're used to having setbacks in training, setbacks, you know, in the ring and this and that. So you're always going to have to adapt and overcome anyway. So I'm sure, you know, Vera will come back and he'll have a different approach, or have the same approach. He'll just make it even more convincing the next time he goes out and fight.
Yeah, for sure. The so one of the questions we had for you, Modestas, I've asked Danny this myself before, but I'd be interested to hear your response as a fighter, a current fighter, which was, would you like to see more ex-fighters, sort of high-level fighters, become judges and referees? Would you like to see more, but also do you think that would improve the standard of judging and refereeing?
I think that's a very interesting question, because, again, I think it goes back to saying that, you know, again, everyone's going to have their own particular priorities in their head as to what they think is going to be winning a fight at the same time. I feel like, yes, if you had an ex-fighter as a judge, it would make it more relatable. So then, therefore, you know, it's not going to be as biased towards a particular area like octagon control or whatever, or takedowns. It seems like a lot of judges nowadays don't see, as if the takedown doesn't land you in a dominant position for ground and pound or a submission or whatever, they don't really look at it that much. So they'll be like, oh yeah, 2 takedowns, but the guy's landing more damage. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's just a case of, you know, I think everyone's got to be sort of on the same page a little bit. Like that, there needs to be some sort of, I don't know, like a layout of, okay, this is what you're looking for. And I think the experience from an ex-fighter added along with that together, you put those two together, then it would actually make things a lot fairer. I think the fact that you're not, you know, the fact that they're not necessarily follow, I don't know if they're told a particular protocol that they're supposed to follow, but it seems like one fight they're scoring it, like in states they score things differently. That's another thing that blew my mind. You go and fight in Nevada, they score takedowns higher, but then you go and fight wherever else and then damage is high. I'm like, that should not be the case.
No, it's got to be an even playing field, don't it?
They do different rule sets, don't they, as well, for what's a grounded opponent, state from state. I mean,
you know, it's a mad thing.
Not good. In the ultimate combat sport, you know, it should be
the
really
same,
one way or another set.
Yeah, 100%.
So Song Yadong won via unanimous decision as well. It wasn't even a split decision. 29-28, 29-28, 29-28. I think we're all in agreement that we all thought Vera won. But I mean, at least if it was a split decision, you could say, well, it was a close fight. So some judges have, you know, one judge has given it to him, one judge has given it to him. Fair enough. But I think the unanimous decision side of it makes it more puzzling. Certainly to me anyway, I found it more puzzling. You guys are a bit more, well, not a bit more, you know more about this, like what the judges are looking for and the scoring and all this sort of thing. But yeah, I couldn't work it out, I gotta say. Next up was Eric Anders versus Christoph Jotko. Danny, what did you think of this one?
I really enjoyed this one. This was really close, and this one was generally hard to score. You had Jotko looking like he was more comfortable in the outward striking, throwing up some nice kicks, landed some nice precise out of range, outward hands. The only thing is he just didn't have a load of venom on him. It didn't look like he was ever going to put Anders away. And Anders made his intentions really clear. He was a big, solid, thick-set guy who obviously favoured the wrestling. It's just that he just didn't have enough clinical completion of his takedowns. He was really good at pressing Jotko up against the fence and working from there, but he just couldn't get it to the ground and keep it there. So he ended up working a lot and getting a little reward from it. So I found that quite frustrating. I do feel like Jotko did enough to win the first round. I think just on the pure wrestling activity and the fact that he put Jotko against the fence so often and really looked at his best striking, breaking away from the wrestling and then shooting back in. He really used his wrestling and pushing up against the fence as part of his striking format. So he'd break free from there, he'd throw a kick and he'd shoot back in again. That shoot was really amongst the combination of his strikes. Never really looked fast enough for me, Anders, when he was out at range. He looked very ploddy, looked a lot slower. But definitely in close, he looked good. And that's why I give Anders the second round. And that third round was so hard, but I just felt like Anders was really pushing for that takedown, which was great. He had Jotko's back against the fence again, but wasn't really getting his striking off enough. And I felt like Jotko was landing just generally enough for me to cast shadow and doubt over the wrestling effectiveness of Anders in that third round. So I gave it 2 rounds to Jotko, being the first and the third, and I gave Anders that second round. I feel like Anders really could have taken this fight if he was just a little bit more clinical with his takedowns. But it wasn't to be. Fair play to Jotko to stay on his feet because he was under pressure there against a stronger, more physical guy.
All right. Okay. So me, obviously, as I mentioned, I have no fighting experience, not a fighter, not a coach, not nothing. I just scored all 3 rounds to Anders. So much so that I was just looking through my notes as you were speaking, and I was thinking, have I got these fighters mixed up? But yeah, like Anders scored a takedown in that first round, and I didn't think there was a great deal between them. I agree with you. Like some of the strikes weren't doing much damage, and he was a bit slow, particularly in that first round to get going. But I did give it to him, and then same in the second and third. I gave it only marginally. It was.
Yeah.
If you told me that you'd scored all 3 to Jotko, I wouldn't have been like, "Oh my god."
I actually, when I was scoring that third round, I wrote Anders down about a minute out or a minute and a half out from the. But then Jotko just seemed to slow down a little bit, and I was like, it was so hard. But yeah, I just finally give it another. But he could have gone either way. This was one of the ones I wouldn't have been comfortable judging. I would have to go on one of those judging courses to see exactly what they do go by. I've done referee courses before, and there was a few things that I'll be like, oh really? They see it like that, and they do it like this. It's quite surprising. But I reckon there'll be a few surprises as well, and perhaps how they judge things. But as a reasonably experienced fighter, I found that one really hard, and any of those rounds could have gone either way. I absolutely agree. But
that makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is how I finally saw it. I looked at the whole thing and I thought, look, Anders was clearly clinching up. The only time he was effective with his striking was breaking free from the wrestling, striking a little bit, and then trying to smother Jotko. Yeah. But outwardly, he really had no success. And if you start adding up how many minutes of the round Jotko was kind of picking him, not apart, but picking at him, scoring here and there, he was doing it for quite a long duration of the minutes of the round. And if you look at the overall stats, Sanders had a massive percentage of the cage control in the clinch, a massive percentage, but he was hugely outstruck overall percentage-wise as well. He was very, very inaccurate with a lot of his strikes because they were really off the break and trying to cluster in. So his strikes kind of got smothered amongst his re-entries, and that's what made it so hard to score. But again, if you look at those statistics, it was Jotko who landed all the strikes, and that's what's potentially going to finish the fight. So I think that the judges gave him the decision on the fact that those punches and kicks were always aiming to try to win the fight, whereas that wrestling, because he wasn't completing them, it's like throwing strikes and missing by a million mile. It's just not effective.
What about you, Modestas, for that one?
Yeah, I mean, look, Eric Anders comes from an American football background. I mean, he played for the number one American football, number one college football team, and they have been for quite a lot of years. So obviously he comes in with a very explosive sort of background. I mean, I saw in his early. It's weird how I don't know, in this fight he really emphasized a lot of wrestling. I mean, from what I've seen in his last fights, he's been more of an anti-wrestler with more striking. I remember when he fought Machida, he was sort of staying outside. Obviously, Machida's very fast and stuff like that, but he was staying a little bit more on the outside with him. I saw another fight that he had at light heavyweight, and the guy was going in more for takedowns, and he was landing big shots. I think he does rely a lot on obviously his explosiveness as well. Like Danny said, kind of going from those explosive shots to reshoot to come out and this and that. So he does rely a lot on the athleticism to sort of get him through the fight. I mean, I just thought it was just a little bit weird seeing him go for a very wrestling heavy based sort of style when he sort of mixed it up a little bit better before. But again, I mean, listen, with Jotko landing all those strikes, if you're getting those shots strike, it's going to force you to want to wrestle more, especially when he was a bit more of a crisper, more technical striker, whereas Anders was very powerful, overhands, big power leg kicks and stuff like that. So I mean, obviously I thought the decision went the right way. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like from Jotko, the strikes just didn't seem to have that much not as much zip behind it you've seen from some other fighters. I don't know
he didn't have power.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw the Vicente Luque fight against Nico Price. So that was the other day. Oh my Lord. Both of them were literally throwing the kitchen sink at each other. It was insanity. You could hear it. I've got surround sound in the sitting room there, and you could usually go boom. You literally just hear the echoes in the arena from the shots that they were landing. You didn't really have much of that in this fight. I mean, and like Danny said, technically the wrestling could have been sharper for the finish. But then again, I guess you got to give credit to Jotko with the takedown defense, and the Chris striking to take that away, to force him to have to reshoot again and do stuff like that. So but another like you guys said, another interesting fight.
Do you think Anders changing strategy could have been because of a lack of fight camp, maybe a bit of stamina issues because of the quarantine and lockdown and things like that? So maybe he wasn't as conditioned as usual. So he maybe relied on that wrestling heavy style because he didn't feel that he had it in the tank to go hard.
But let's say
on the feet.
Let's say he didn't have the means to train the grappling areas, right? Or he didn't have training partners to train with, or he just had his home or whatever, right? Predominantly, unless you have a grappling dummy or something else, I don't know, bloody teddy bear or whatever, to practice particular moves or this or that, you're going to be predominantly doing striking. You'll be going on running, you'll be doing sprints or whatever, and you'll be doing striking. So I actually think it's a bit weird seeing him go for that when predominantly, if you don't have the means to go out and do the certain types of training, the predominant thing that you're going to be able to do is striking. So realistically, you should be working mainly more on the striking aspect as opposed to the wrestling. Maybe actually, I don't know, maybe if he didn't have enough sparring, he didn't feel confident to throw those shots that he normally throws. Maybe the timing was not there and stuff like that. Maybe when he has his sparring, he's able to land his shots, so he's a bit more confident in his shots. Whereas he's like, do you know what? I'm not as confident in my shots now, so I'm going to go wrestling heavy, try and get him down, and then we're gonna win it tactically that way. So I guess there's a lot of different. But if you were asking me, if someone didn't, if they didn't have a gym or they didn't have certain things to practice the grappling, I would imagine doing more running, doing more of that type of stuff. And then adding more striking and like, always doing shot. I mean, yeah, I understand if you don't have like a pad holder, then it might be difficult to get those timing of shots. But, a lot of them have access to bags and stuff like that. I reckon he probably could have worked his cardio that way. But it's funny, yeah, without a proper fight camp, for a lot of these fighters, it does take away their timing for landing shots. It takes away the timing for going for takedowns. It takes away a lot of those sort of things which are necessary. Yes, you can improve on the necessary skill set, like, skill specific aspects of each area, but in terms of actually putting them into practice, you're not getting that much of that in there. But
and Anders doesn't have a striking background though, does he? I don't think
he doesn't.
So I imagine if you're not absolutely on that all the time,
I guess so, yeah.
And then I think you're going to go for what feels a more comfortable route, which is what I think this is why we saw him try this smother tactic. I just think that it could have got the nod over those rounds if he was just being more effective at keeping him on the fence and being proactive and kind of do what Randy Couture used to do. Randy Couture used to sort of like dirty box you to death against the fence if he weren't taking you down. He'll either take you down and beat you up the ground and pound and just keep taking you down and smother you, which we see time and time again, or he would literally just beat you up on the fence. Instead, he kind of cuddled him on the fence a little bit too much. And that's why I just didn't quite give him a nod. Yes, he did land strikes as he broke from the wrestling. But I just think once you had hold of him, there are controls you can use where you can free up one hand to strike or, to get inside bicep control or hold the wrist to throw a knee to the body and legs. I think he could have used that wrestling position that he had so much time of to be proactive with the strikes. Because like Modesta said, are the judges looking for just damage these days? I think they are more so looking at damage. So when you have that wrestling, the only way you're going to score in that wrestling, if you can't get the takedown, is to use that wrestling engagement, especially when they're up against the fence, to engage with those strikes, which Modestas know, we work a lot on our fence work to counter with the strikes and also to be proactive when pushing somebody against the fence with strikes, because you can't always guarantee a takedown.
Yeah, I do wonder, just lastly, I'll say, I do wonder if some fighters may second guess themselves a little bit after this period of uncertainty, whether if they don't feel as if they've got their timing down or they've been able to do as much sparring as normal, or whatever aspect it may be, if you do just see some fighters maybe not as confident as they would normally be after, as you guys will know, I'm assuming if you've done like a full fight camp of sparring and fitness and grappling and striking, and you're doing everything every single day, when that fight camp ends, you're going to feel as good as you can in terms of your skill set. And I just wonder whether maybe some of these fighters aren't feeling that confidence that they would normally have because they just haven't got a full fight camp with their teams and partners and stuff.
It's a guessing game. We can only surmise.
Speculation and that.
I will add though, I think during any sort of situation though, doesn't matter whether it be, good or bad or whatever, I think you should always adapt and overcome. I think if you're relying as well a bit too heavily on being able to have a quote unquote fight camp and this and that, and you're not able to do the things that you're going to do, and it's putting doubt into your mind, then that's not a healthy thing I don't think so, for a fight. I think this is why this is a big part of me. When if you look at me, I mean, there's rarely a day that I'm not training or trying to think. Like every time I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, well, let me go to jiu-jitsu. I might be able to learn something here, or maybe I can do this and I can learn that and this, that. And if you look at predominantly what all my training's been in terms of drilling, it's been going over all the moves that I didn't get a chance to really go over that much. Do you know what I mean? Like there's always other things. Like they're talking about, I'm not able to get my cardio and this and that. Why don't you go and run? Listen, I hate running. I freaking hate it. Like it's not the first thing in the forefront of my mind for a training session to go out and run 5 miles. I'm literally dreading it. I'm like, oh my God.
I know why you don't like it, Modesta. It's because of that massive arse of yours.
Having to haul that thing around, mate.
I wouldn't want to run with that ass on the back of me.
Oh, mate, trust me, I get stopped every 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Mainly by men, actually. But anyway, so so yeah, no, like, you know, I like, you know, it's something that needs to be done. But now I've been able to get more runs in, for example, and it's made my cardio even better for the rounds that I do with my dad and stuff like that, and on the bag. So there's always got to be something that you're being able to work. I mean, listen, Bruce Lee said, like, would always say the best. You know, you got to adapt. These situations are tough. They're hard. Like 100%, it's not a good time. You know, it's a very bad global situation we have. But at the same time, you've always got to be trying to improve. I mean, listen, as a fighter, how you don't know when things are going to go bad, and what you're just going to sit there and think, oh yeah, well, I just can't train as hard, and then you can't have that doubt in your head. I think.
Yeah. Do you know how? Yeah, do you know how I see it? I see that it's going to affect everyone differently, and it all depends on your mindset. Modesta's mindset is to just try to find a way of doing some sort of training, move forward and improve yourself somehow, some way, no matter what the circumstances. And that's absolutely correct of what you should be doing. But some fighters, they see it as a job. It is literally just a way of earning money to get by. And like with any job, you have the opportunity to add some paid leave, or even unpaid leave if you have a little bit in the bank to not work. We would all like to take time off.
Day
of
off,
work. Yeah, so it's having a bit of time off, and some of the fighters will treat it as a time off, and other fighters realize that it ain't actually just a job. You're only ever young once, and you'll learn this as you reach your mid-30s. You begin to realize, oh crikey, things feel a little different now, and you start to realize this ain't forever. I remember back when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, I remember thinking, I'm never going to stop competing. I'm going to fight forever. But trust me, your mind matures, your body begins to hurt. It doesn't run the way it used to run. You know, things and circumstances change. But I was exactly the same as with Desta. When I was trying to perfect my kicking, I was turning the light switch on and off before I go to bed by kicking it. I was closing doors by kicking the handle, and all these things I was obsessing with. I walked down a garden path holding my kid's hand, doing long knees. You know, it was never out my head to be working my technique. I'd jump on the floor and jiu-jitsu my dog on the weekends, or their missus at the time, or boyfriend. Whoever, you know, it's you've got to obsess about it, man. It's a small window of opportunity to train, and you should embrace it.
Well, that's it. We're like you said, 100%. You're not going to compete forever. I mean, listen, even from 20 years old to now is already a difference, and I'm like, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like going from now to 35. Like, it's the body does change like consistently over time, and now if you have injuries, they pop up a little bit. Like, they pop up a little bit more, but your recovery is a little bit better now. But in a couple of years, the recovery won't be as good. So you're going to have to again find a way to get around that. So it's a crazy time. But I think, listen, if your career is about 10, 15 years or however long it is, like exactly like you say, make the most of it. You've not got a massive window of opportunity. If you're not trying to progress and get as good as you can in it in the short space of time that you have, then it's just sort of wasting time a little bit. I think every fighter should be striving to be the best martial artist out there, but then again, at the same time, I guess that's what separates the cream of the crop from the regional level fighters or and stuff like that. So
that's why you get winners and losers.
Yeah, that's it. So I guess if we didn't have that, then obviously the competition would be very different. So
at the end of the day, fighting, much like anything else in life, is you get what you put in out. You get out what you put in, and if you get a bit lax with it, the younger generation will pass you by. And I think in fighting, that is more prominent than any other job or sport, in that I hear like Danny and I hear Richard Shaw talking about the boys and girls who are like 14, 15, 16 training in the academies, and how talented they are and how unbelievable they're going to potentially be. And then I think, you know, if fighters now in this lockdown period start to sleep a bit and they think they've already made it or whatever it may be, there's a whole new generation on their way up who will happily take their place, who are hungry and sharp. And it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mad.
So next fight was Dan Ige. I always pronounce his name wrong as well. I'm terrible with names. Iggy, yeah. Dan Ige, I think it is, versus Edson Barboza. Dan Ige is ranked number 15, and Edson Barboza ranked number 11. I was surprised to learn.
Barboza's first time at featherweight. I was surprised he can get down to that.
Oh yeah, sorry, he's ranked 11 at lightweight. It's good effort, mind, at his age, isn't it, to get down to featherweight? Jeez, whoo.
Yeah,
good effort.
Not easy.
Okay, then let's start with you, Modestas. What did you make of this one? Oh, he's changed his headphones.
Yeah, sorry, it's just because the battery's running low, and on those ones, I can't put the. That's the only bad thing about these phones is like they put the earphones and the charger socket in the same plug. So it's like, well, so how are you supposed to charge it and listen to someone else? Anyways, I sorted that problem out, so we're all good to go now.
Sweet.
Sorry.
So Dan Ige, Edson Barboza, mate.
Right. Well, I thought personally, Edson Barboza won that fight.
Yeah, I have the same.
I think he. I mean, listen. Obviously, Dan seemed to hurt him a little bit in that first round, but then afterwards, like Edson Barboza comes back and lands some like really, really powerful shots. He was just doing more damage overall. He was mixing up the game a lot better than Ige. Ige seemed to slow down a little bit over the course of the rounds. So, I mean, listen, again, I mean, Barboza looked really good at featherweight. Really good at featherweight. I mean, think how many years he's been at lightweight, and now he's dropping down another weight class again, you know, sort of later in his career. And, you know, for him to look like that with a performance like that as well. This is why I think, you know, the officiating for this particular event was a little bit off, I guess. Again, just in my view, but yeah, from those bright early sparks from Dan, it really didn't mean much because overall Barboza was landing all the, like, as the fight was going on further, was landing all the crisper shots, the nicest shots, dropped him as well. So, I don't see how you could not give it to Barboza with an overall...
Yeah, Barboza ended up on top in the ground in 2 of those rounds.
Yeah.
And was doing damage at both times, especially in that first round. He was really aggressive. I do think Dan was edging it on Barboza in that first round, but when he got knocked down and Barboza got on top, Barboza was straight to work, had good high posture. I absolutely agree. I had Barboza winning the first 2 rounds, and you know, I was trying to be kind to Dan to give him that third. I think, you know, he did step up the pace in the third, and you could argue that he may have got that third round, but Barboza was 2 rounds up for sure. I was bewildered by the decision going against him.
Yeah, I had Barboza winning the first 2, and then I taken the last one. Barboza looked pretty good, I thought. I thought his striking was pretty good. He was working his jab well as well. Particularly, even in that 3rd round, which I had him losing, I thought Barboza did quite well with his jab. Not bad for an older gent, is he? He's still got something about him, Mr. Barboza.
Look at his physique. His physique's always been consistent. This guy obviously is a clean eating training machine, and you'll still see him around for a good few years, knocking around in that top 10, I think, because he's such a true athlete. And I think, you know, seeing him come down a weight though, you can only but think that this is his last little run at trying to get himself in contention before we might see him retire. So possibly the last 18 months we'll see, depending on how those results go. But things going against him like that can't do him any favours for motivation to do that weight cut and put on a good good performance overall in a new weight division against a tricky opponent, and to really have that decision go against you with a good performance like that is pretty sickening for him. I imagine he's pretty gutted right now.
Well, you could understand him reacting like the guy did earlier in the show, because I actually thought this was much more clear that he won this, whereas the Song fight I actually thought was very close. And whilst I did think that that Song lost, it was close enough that I didn't find it outrageous. Whereas this one, I was like, come on, this was quite clear. So Barbosa's 34 now. Do you think he could possibly have if he could string a couple of fights together quite quickly, he could have a run at the featherweight title, Modestas?
I don't know. They got Alexander Volkanovski's now the champ, isn't it?
Featherweight division.
I mean, there's a couple in the top 10 that are still quite dangerous. I mean, you've got Max Holloway. Dustin Poirier moved up a weight class. I mean, listen, they've got a couple of still really, really good guys in that weight class. So it would still be very difficult for him to sort of work up the ranks. I mean, he did put on a very good performance, but obviously there are quite a lot of killers in like I say, especially in the top 10. So, go on.
I was just going to tell you the top 10 for the featherweights: Volkanovski, Max Holloway, Chan Sung Young, Zabit Magomedov, Yair Rodriguez, Calvin Kattar off the back of his extremely impressive KO of Jeremy Stevens the other day, Frankie Edgar, Jeremy Stevens, Josh Emmett, Arnold Allen.
It's stacked. That is a stacked division.
Yeah,
so many good guys.
Top 10. And then you've got guys like Cub Swanson, Ryan Hall, Darren Elkins.
And I think it's crazy. Ryan Hall's it seems like a bit of the dark horse in the division.
Well, there you
go. He don't get much opportunity to fight, does he?
No. Bryce Mitchell ranked 23. That's how stacked it is.
23.
How good was he on Saturday? And he's ranked 23rd, but he's on a 3-fight win streak, maybe 4 actually. Cron Gracie down there at 22 as well. I wouldn't mind seeing a Bryce Mitchell Cron Gracie matchup, I gotta say.
I think that'd be an interesting fight, actually.
Yeah, I think that would be real good.
I would love to see that.
Sorry, mate.
Yeah, I think Bryce Mitchell as well. He's got a very pressuring wrestling style. Like he 100% wants to get you to. I don't know how the hell he manages to pull off that twister. Like almost every single fight he gets there, it's mad. Like to go straight from those positions into that, it's like it's almost something that's so rare to sort of come across, because people you would think have wised up to it. But against him, it just seems like that's his go-to thing. Like he loves to try and get that back control and get the different. Yeah. But his jiu-jitsu for MMA is very good, and his wrestling for MMA, like he works so well for striking with that pressure. So yeah, I mean with Crone, I think Bryce's striking will probably be better. Obviously, Crone's got insanity jiu-jitsu, but again with MMA with strikes with a different, Bryce would probably end up getting the takedown overall. With that fight, I think it would be very interesting for people to see stylistically for a lot of MMA fans, because you've got someone from the the best family in jiu-jitsu ever, fighting in the UFC against a guy who's also got good jiu-jitsu but from elsewhere. So it'd be I think that would be quite an interesting fight. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I like the sound of that one. Yeah, that division, I think it's the featherweight, the lightweight, and I think is it the light heavyweight? There's those 3 divisions. The rankings are just ridiculous. Like every fighter is capable of really pushing on if they just get a string of few wins together. All capable of beating each other as well. So yeah, Dan Ige took this by split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. But I think we all agreed that we felt Edson Barbosa won it.
Yep.
And then we got, I think, the match of the evening, or certainly off the main card at least, which was Claudia Gadelha versus Angela Hill in the co-main event. Danny, would you take us through your thoughts?
Yeah, I really love this one. You know how I enjoy the women bouts, not just because it's two females getting it on. Yeah, this is really good. I just find the women are technically really crisp. The striking, I just love. Women really do go at it with the striking, and these girls didn't disappoint. Really technically crisp all the way through. It was really interesting. This is another decision that I was left with my head scratched at the end of it. I just really felt like Hill was being more diverse with her striking. She was throwing up kicks as well as punches. She worked so good out of range. I gave Gadelha the first round, but I gave Hill the last two. And it had such a typical pattern to it. It was clear that Gadelha was wanting to take it to the ground towards the latter part of the round. She got away in the first round, but was not getting away in the second or the third round. She was just only able to get it on the ground or keep it there. And for my money, Hill was landing. Hill went about her strategy a little bit strange. She was a taller, rangier girl, but she was using hook punches a lot. I didn't think they was going to have any success, but she did actually get success and put Gadelha on her ass. But she kept rolling with it. It did start to show through and work well for her. But I like the way Hill started incorporating some high kicks into the mix. I just felt like she was just doing enough all the time. Gadelha was predominantly just using hands to look to clinch, but not getting successful all the time. She definitely looked crisp, definitely making the rounds look close. But yeah, I done it 2 rounds to 1 for Hill, but didn't go that way.
So I had Claudia Gadelha winning 1-3 and Angela Hill winning the middle one. What about you, Modestas?
Obviously we all agree that that Claudia won the first round. I mean, she got the takedown as well. So yeah, she clearly can control that round. But yeah, Angela Hill, 100% agree that she had like a lot more diverse sort of skills with her striking. She ended up being very good with her takedown. I don't know, like Claudia just seemed like she was getting, I don't know, in her face and her reactions when she was in the fight, she seemed like she was losing to Angela. I don't know. It was like almost like a subtle tell that you can just see from the outside of it. Like Angela was landing a lot of really like crisp, nice strikes. I mean, I guess the third round was also like sort of very close. It's hard because yeah, definitely the second round you give to Angela, but third one I didn't really know, to be honest with you. Yeah, I thought, like Danny says, I mean, you know, the women's fights, if you see it, like the technical ability of some of these women is insanity. Sometimes you think, like, in comparison to the men, they're like, oh, you know, on the same level, if not better, you know, some of them. So it was a really good fight, but yeah, I don't really know. That was one where I'm just thinking to myself, like, I mean, Claudia getting the decision, that's okay. But if Angela got the decision, that would have been okay as well. So, but either way, definitely have to give that fight of the night, probably.
Yeah, I think so. What I like about a lot of these female fights, particularly the ones where they're like main events or co-main events, is they don't hold back at all. You know, like some of the male main events, sometimes they get hyped up, and then when they come around, they kind of don't deliver, and guys don't go perhaps hell for leather, or they don't get stuck in as much as you're expecting them to. And I feel like we've been treated, Dan, to a few real bangers between the female athletes over the last, well, since we've been doing this regular show, like 21 shows. There's been a couple where the women have gone hell for leather for 3-5 rounds, just smashing it up. Like, and whilst this wasn't as brutal as the one that we watched,
Zhang Weili and
and Joanna
Jacek.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was just ridiculous fight.
Amazing.
That was.
I think it's the best well-matched striking combination I've ever seen out of the men or women. I just think it's a shame or not. I think their time is coming. I just want to see more women being the top main draw in the fight night. You know, to be the headlining fight. I think they should be more so put up there right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite female fighter to watch, Modestas?
Favorite female fighter?
Yeah.
I was really, to be fair, I was really liking Zhang Weili with her striking and her mentality when she comes into fights. She's very entertaining and she bloody hits hard. I don't know, man. Like it's hard to say because like obviously there's a lot. Oh, do you know who else is good? Is it Shevchenko? Valentina Shevchenko. I think she is brutal. She is just wiping out the division. I mean, look, there's so many really good fighters. You've got Amanda Nunes as well, but I do like Valentina. I like the way she presents herself. I like that she has her heritage. Always does, you know, this dance that she does from Russia and stuff like that. And you know, she's very well versed everywhere. You know, she does well to stop the takedown. She's got crazy good striking, got a good ground game. So, you know, and it's weird because in that particular division, I don't see anyone beating her, like legitimately. Like it's like, you know, you look at the divisions and you think, okay, well, you know, that would be an interesting fight. You don't know who's going to win, but with her, I'm like thinking, really, who's going to take the title from her? So that's why I would say probably.
I would say she's the best one. She's so clinical technically. Everything she does has a thought or a pre-planned process behind it. And she's like just literally a machine, an absolute machine. Her kicks are always technically lie on perfect, including the timing. Her punches are always clinical. Her combinations are so well tempoed. She's absolute joy. And then her ground is just so tight. So tight. You see the way she gets those side controls. She gets those side controls. Her head is buried, but then she chips with the knees. She gets space for the strikes. Really, really productive. There's no wasted energy in anything she chooses to do. And I absolutely agree with Modesta. I can't see anyone in that division right now getting near her.
Indeed. Okay, so on to the main event. Mr. Alistair Overeem versus Walt Harris. I got to say, just before we start, Walt Harris is my hero. The man, everything he's been through to just come out and still have the motivation and the dedication to perform at the highest level. You know, so soon afterwards as well. I just think he deserves tremendous amount of credit. You could see he was quite like kind of hurt emotionally by like losing the fight, and I think maybe, you know, I'd imagine he put a lot of pressure on himself to try and get the win for this particular fight. But I hope, he said he'll be back, and I hope that, you know, he comes back to a high level because he's a really capable fighter as well, and he's entertaining to watch. So, you know, Godspeed to him because, geez, as a father, I just can't imagine it. And I don't like imagining it to go through what he's been through and his family's been through. Deserves a tremendous amount of credit. And also, I feel like Alistair Overeem deserves a lot of credit for the way he acted after the fight, during the fight, before the fight, but particularly afterwards. Even though it was a big win for him, you know, they're ranked 8 versus 9, but he didn't care about celebrating his win at that immediate moment. He was only interested in consoling, checking on, congratulating, whatever it may be, to Walt Harris. And I think that just shows a lot of class and says a lot about the man as well as the fighter. So let's start with you, Dan, for this one. Alistair Overeem, Walt Harris.
Yeah, explosive. Exactly how you want to see this type of weight division be, and this one didn't disappoint at all. I think Walt Harris did exactly the right type of thing. I think he had to go for the KO. Overeem has been seen to, I wouldn't say have a glass jaw, but you know, you can rock him and get to a finish, or he can be sparked out with that one well-placed punch. Walt Harris is a massive man, really big guy. And I thought it was game over. I really did. When he knocked Overeem down, Overeem was bleeding. He looked dazed. He looked overpowered, swamped. But Overeem is a tricky customer. This guy's been around a long, long time. Didn't he start? I think they said in the commentary he's been competing professionally in MMA since 1999. 2 decades. 2 decades. I did one and my body was in bits. But okay, he had help along the way. He was taking every kind of drug possible at one point. He was like a brown Hulk at one point. But look, you got to respect this guy. He's been through so much, and I think his ground game, you don't see enough of it. His ground game is really tasty. He's got a really good MMA approach. I think the weakness in his game has always been that slightly fragile chin, and you can't have a fragile chin in that weight division and go unbeaten. So he has his losses. But what a comeback. He come back. It all started with a head kick. He got a really extensive K1 background. So he'll have his tricks there. And he did. He placed that really good head kick. It started that process for him to get on top. And it didn't take long for him to was it referee, wasn't it? Stepped him in the end and stayed.
He wasn't defending himself, was he?
No,
for a minute or so before.
Yeah, he had difficult, didn't he? I mean, as much as he had real good moments in that first round, unfortunately, he ended up with a really difficult situation where he was getting chipped away on. I think maybe that took some of his energy levels away, made his hands a little low in that second round, and he got clipped and got caught.
Yeah, it's a very interesting fight to watch. Both guys capable of finishing a fight in seconds. Yeah. And you're right. I thought Walt Harris had him in that first round. Overeem used every ounce of his experience to get himself together, to come back around, just didn't panic. And I think Walt Harris's eagerness to get the finish actually cost him in the end. And he got caught, which
quite
is unfortunate, but you know, it's part of it, part of the fight game, isn't it? Modestas, what did you make of this one, mate?
Well, firstly, I'd like to obviously send prayers and well wishes to Walt Harris and the Blanchard family, because obviously that's a completely, you know, tragic and crazy situation. Like with all this pandemic stuff going around, and then that happening to his family, you know, it's I can imagine emotionally it's quite a hard thing to obviously have to deal with, and then go in and fight at the same time. So yeah, like I say, massive respect and send all prayers to him and his family. I thought, you know, the same thing with you lot. I thought as soon as I saw that KO when I was watching it in the morning, I was standing like, oh, he's got him, he's finished him. And I think the extensive years of experience and, like, you know, being in these tough fights and, you know, maybe being hit by very hard punch. I mean, listen, if you're getting hit by Francis Ngannou, I mean, you've had some licks before. So, you know, the fact that he's had hard shots landed on him, maybe he has that experience now to think, okay, well, if I can survive from something like that, or like I can feel like I'm still there, I might still be in it. Because then, yeah, it seemed like Walt sort of rushed in a little bit and then really sort of neglected the wrestling sort of jiu-jitsu aspect of it and went in for the finish too much. Like, in my personal opinion, I thought that front kick that he threw was just not good. Like, he would have been better off, because he rocked him twice. Like, he would have been better off to go in and land some clean punches on him and maybe take his time. He literally ran, went for a head kick, had his back taken, and then it's just like it was all downhill from there, really. And obviously, like, you know, and the head kick and stuff. So it's mad, because it's a crazy fight. Like you said, the power can go, you know, the power in that weight class, any one shot can finish it. But yeah, it looked to me though like Alistair's ground game was very technically sound. Like, he had him flattened out. The guy didn't have any answers at all. Like, it was weird for me, because, like, you know, obviously when we're practicing like all the get ups and this and that, and, you know, trying to get up from these positions, we're taught a particular protocol in order, you know, with the frames and how to get out of these positions. You'd think, I don't know if he was tired or what was going on, but it seemed like Walt Harris seemed like, you know, he wasn't doing the things that obviously in a fight it's crazy, it's a volatile situation, but surely there should be some things that, okay, I know I have to do this when I'm in this position and that position, and it sort of looked like he didn't have that particular knowledge in those positions, because then Alistair Overeem just took advantage of that, got on top of him, landed those strikes, had his back. And I mean, listen, when I was watching it as well, I was like, he is landing so many unanswered shots. Like, surely the referee's got to step in now. And then it just kept going, like, boom, 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 from the back with his hands up like this. So it's mad. I think Walt Harris could have easily won that fight had he been a bit more patient with how he's going to go about the finish. Because Overeem, with that experience, I think that's what got him through the dangerous parts of the fight, especially when he got rocked. And then obviously with his K1 background and stuff like that, landing a kick and you know, and then taking the back and just landing technically, like, step by step from taking the back to this and that, and having dominant positions with the ground and pound. So and as you said, obviously I like to see that there was a lot of respect shown obviously by Overeem. It must have been a very hard time even still, you know, for Walt, you know, with that whole situation. So it was nice to see respect between fighters as well. I think it's nice to see in general there's been quite a lot of respect between the fighters, like Glover Teixeira and Anthony Smith, because obviously we've seen a lot of trash talking. Obviously, yeah, that sells fights, this and that, but you know, you don't get enough of that in the game as well, where actually, do you know what, at the end of the day, or you've settled your differences, whatever, at the end of the fight, that's the end of the fight. Like, do you know what I mean? You pay your respects and that's it. You go about your ways. You both got, you know, your families to go to. You both got this and that to go to. So, very, very interesting fight. It definitely had me on the edge of my seat, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think one of my, just on something you said there, one of my favorite things about Conor McGregor is actually probably not what people would think. One of the things I like about Conor McGregor the most is no matter what happens in a fight, and in the build up to the fight, win, lose, draw, whatever, he is very, very respectful afterwards. He will check on his opponent. He will give him the respect that is due, because I think he does view it as, you know, the stuff before is promotion or whatever you want to say. Then the fight settles it, and then he's always very respectful, even if it's against someone who he really dislikes, whether it's Khabib or whether it's Nate Diaz. He was always very respectful afterwards. Granted, he then in the rematch starts building it up again on social media and says whatever he says, but I just think, you know, like, leave it in the cage once it's done. At the end of the day, you're all putting your health, life on the line to fight. So just
I absolutely agree with you about him. You know, he puts a lot of pressure on himself to win with all the talk that he does, and he's arguably the best that we've ever seen regards to talking it up before a fight. And you know, he's changed the sport. I think I think the highest paid for an individual fighter that we've had regards MMA, and he certainly bumped up the general pay for each fighter. I mean, I think they're still so far behind boxing. Still, sometimes you'll see, you know, how much revenue a promotion like UFC brings in and what percentage goes to the fight. I think it's still below 20% or around 20%.
Yeah, and, 19%.
Yeah, and if you have a look at some of the top boxing promotions, when they put on top fighters, you know, let's just say like the Tyson matches, 80% of the proceeds go to the fighters. I mean, if that's not a show that they respect the fighters more than they do in MMA, I don't know what is. So yeah, MMA's got a long way to go before it matches boxing. I just hope it does get there at some point, because, you know, as much as boxing ain't easy, MMA ain't easy. You have so many areas you have to work. It really ain't easy. You know, with boxing, you get these real famous boxers. They're sort of like in training camps, and because they get paid so well, they normally don't train for a long period, and then they have massive preparation periods of like 12 weeks. MMA fighters don't have that luxury. They finish the fight, they heal up, they've got to go back in the gym to hone other areas, because there's such a broad spectrum of potential ways to lose. wrestling, striking, ground, and anything in between. Yeah, absolute shocking difference. But yeah, you're right. To get back to point, McGregor has always received the defeat really, really well. You know, he doesn't have any excuses. He's always really respectful of who beat him or who he beats. And for that part of him is really good. I don't agree with his antics outside the cage. There's been some real questionable things there, but that's his personal life, and that's out from the cage. But certainly in the cage and everything around the sport, direct, I think he's conducted himself very, very well.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, like he's criticised for, and I don't mean the legal problems as such that he's had outside the cage. Specifically, he's criticised for some of the things he says in his promotion when he was promoting Mayweather. But everyone wants to fight McGregor because they know that he'll do that, and the pay-per-view buys will be over 1 million, and they'll get a massive chunk of money because of it. So whilst people are quick to criticize him for running his mouth, if you like, everybody wants that fight as well because of that. So yeah, you know, it is what it is, as they say. Okay, so that's our UFC breakdown for last night. So we're going to finish off with first of all, we're going to go with the part 3 in our look into the rise of Jack Tank Shaw, the young man who's from Abertillery in Wales. He signed with the UFC, and after he had ripped through the Cage Warriors bantamweight division, I find it really. We got a listener or a viewer requested that we do this. Have a look at all his Cage Warriors fights and all the way up to his UFC debut, just to have a look, a rewatch of it all. And I have to say, like at the time, we were looking for retro shows to review because there was no current stuff. I was like, okay, someone asked, so we'll do it. And I got to say, it's been very enjoyable. And it's easy to forget because he's only fought, I think, once in the UFC so far. It's easy to forget how talented he is. He's a very, very impressive athlete. And you can see why when they did sign him to the UFC, why Dana White spoke so highly of him straight away. So today we're looking at Cage Warriors 79, his fight versus Eddie Pobivanes from Pobivanes from Germany. This was a Newport. Jack won via TKO punches in the second round. Danny, what did you make of this Jack's performance in this? And
each time we watch him as we go through the weeks, he's been getting more and more difficult opponents, but only difficult in terms of their ability to defend against his onslaught. But an onslaught it continues to be nevertheless. This guy was clearly clever on his back. He was locking down in that half guard, trying to do sweeps. This guy really snapped his hips to get back from side control into the half guard again to full guard. The guy clearly had really good movement with his hips, this Eddie, but all you saw is an even more diverse attacking combinations on the ground. It's not criticism of Jack Shaw by any stretch, but each week that we've seen some guys that don't appear to have much offense regards to the wrestling. He's taken these guys down with very little effort, leaving him with huge amounts of energy to engage in the ground where he's clearly looking strong. But that's nothing to take away from him. I mean, maybe his wrestling's that good that he's making it look easy, like Khabib does. Khabib out wrestles other fantastic wrestlers. So maybe we're not giving enough credit there. You only got what you got in front of you. But it would be nice to see what would happen if someone can resist his takedowns. I'm kind of curious of what his creativity would be then up against the fence or out in the open back striking again. I'm almost sure that from what I'm seeing of him and speaking and knowing what I know of Richard Shaw's dad, that they will have a game plan for such situations when they arise. But this was a nigh on perfect performance yet again. It was absolutely clinical. The kid seems to compete with no nerves. Obviously, we all get nerves. You have to be practically inhuman to not have nerves. But my God, he just gets in there and he performs. There's no warming up process, no feeling out with range. He's in, he gets where he wants it to be, and you can resist all you like. Just keep resisting. All it's going to do is buy him a little bit more time, and he just get you a little later on in the fight. And that's what I saw here. I saw somebody could resist a little longer, but still be on absolute receiving end in every aspect of that grappling exchange. And it went to a victory for him in a very convincing manner yet again. Well done, Jack Shaw. It's just utterly impressive.
Yeah, funny enough, I was just looking at some of the upcoming fights we're going to look at, and there's a couple of KOs in there, and there's a submission, a decision. So we got some interesting stuff to look at. What impressed me in this particular one was, number one, the opponent was much more capable, like you said, defending on the ground. Whereas the first couple, I think the first fight we watched was a amateur fight, and then this sort of first pro with Cage Warriors. The French guy, obviously last week, they didn't do head strikes in France at that point, so he didn't know what to do when Jack got the mount. Whereas this guy knew, even when Jack got him to the ground and tripped him, he knew to do certain things to defend himself. What impressed me was Jack's transitions when the other guy tried to instigate a scramble, or if just when something would happen, Jack would move so quickly. He was on him in seconds, and it was very, very impressive. He finishes with the TKO. Mark Goddard stops it for punches, but again, like we said it the last couple of weeks, you can only beat what's in front of you, and it's been pretty much perfect. Did you watch this, Modestas?
Yes, I did actually. Listen, I've always given massive praise to Jack. He's an extremely talented guy in every single area. It's funny, if you look at across the broad range of his fights, he's managed to be able to do really well whilst pressuring other fighters, but also whilst he's been on his back foot. So he's managed to adapt to both different ways, that if he would have to fight a guy who wants to come at him more, or if he needs to come at the guy. In this particular fight, he chose to come at the guy a bit more. He had a very stiff jab. Like, that was a lovely jab that inevitably got him to where he wanted to be up against the cage. And I mean, listen, he used the same takedown, I think twice, but it was really effective. That outside leg trip, bang, straight on the guy's back, no questions asked. And the control that Jack had on top was, I thought, immense. I mean, but you see that in, again, all of his fights. Anytime it gets to the ground, his control, pressure, striking, his IQ on the floor is like really next level, you know what I mean? So obviously this is why he's like one of the top prospects. But yeah, the guy underneath, he did, seem to know what he's doing, trying to get a lockdown, but every time Jack always seemed to have an answer. And then inevitably, as the positions progressed, as the guy was struggling more to handle, being thrown in the shark's tank pretty much with Jack, as the positions progressed, it just became even worse and worse for the guy. Eventually managed to get the back, get on top, ground and pound, see you later. You know what I mean? It was a very, very clinical performance, but from everywhere. Like, that the jab was just boom right in there straight away, got in his face, got him to the cage, got the outside leg trip. He didn't really have to work so hard to get it either. He landed a couple of nice strikes, and then he had the overhook on the right. Yeah, he had the overhook, but it's sort of pressing down on his arm, so he had no sort of underhook raise on that side, and then straight away just took the leg from underneath him and bang, straight on the floor. Did that twice. So he's very well versed in those areas. But yeah, as soon as it hit the floor, man, like completely clinical. Like even with the guy attempting to get out, it was hard for him.
He just keeps hitting you with subtle technical attacks, so much so that you're gonna have to walk into a checkmate position. That's what he does. He's feeling out for a potential win. But the nice thing about what Jack Shaw is doing is, not only is he hunting for that submission if it comes about, But if it doesn't, he's looking to elbow you. He don't just want to win the round. He's trying to win the fight outright. And Modesta, you were saying this earlier on, that really needs to be emphasized on, because this is something I push for my students to do. Always push to win the round outright. Don't have it in your mind, oh, I'm going to win by I want to win by rear naked choke. No, you win by what's given to you. But to do that, you've got to get ahead, stay ahead, and pressure to move them in position for checkmate. You need to outwit your opponent in all avenues, so they only have one pathway left to go, and that leads them straight to the dead end where you trap them and get them. And that's what he appears to do. That's how he's able to get these guys down with the takedown in the first place, and then he mauls them on the ground, looks for the elbows, puts you under so much pressure underneath that you've got a choice to try and escape when it's perhaps a bit premature to do so and get yourself submitted, or you can stay there and get cut up by those elbows, because he ain't just punching you, he's looking to elbow you. And that's a dangerous opponent to be up against.
Indeed. And just to finish off on this, next Friday for our live show, starting at 6 p.m. UK time, our special guest will be Mr. Jack Tank Shaw, which I'm very excited to be. Much like Modestas, Jack's been on before. And as I said to Richard last week, I might don't know if it was on the show with you, Danny, or if I said it to him during the interview I did with him a couple of weeks ago. One of the other things which impresses me about Jack is the way he conducts himself outside the cage. You'll never see him on social media, like getting involved in silly spats or insulting people or, just whatever, all the silly stuff which people do on social media. Never see any of that. He conducts himself pretty much like a gentleman. He's a very, very nice guy. He's friendly, he's approachable. And I think it says a lot, not just about him, but obviously his father and his training and the work they're doing. Again, like they've got some really talented fighters over in Shore MMA. We've talked about Oban Elliott a lot, Dan. He's another one he's not as quite as what can I say? He's not quite as quiet as Jack, and he's got a bit more to say for himself. But he's a very, very talented boy, and it'd be interesting. I think when you look at some of the names. I just look like, obviously I speak to you, Danny, every week. I speak to like Jack and Oban and people now and again. I speak to Richard now and again. And I think of all the fighters which you've mentioned from BST, like young fighters like Jordan, and like me and Modesta spoke about Jordan during the podcast which we did before. Tom and as well spoke about Jordan and some other people. Just in BST and Shore MMA, there seems to be an abundance of really quality young MMA fighters coming through now. And that's without, speaking or even talking about other academies and other places around the UK and Wales. And hopefully we're on with the beginning of an MMA bang, as it were, to really take the sport to the next level and get the fighters paid as they should be.
Yeah.
So that's my little.
You're absolutely right. Everything you said, absolutely right.
Okay, so
you know what? I have to. Sorry.
Go on.
I was just going to add one more point, actually. Just to say, speaking about pay and stuff like that, I think a lot of that as well is dependent on, the entertainment factor, how you fight. There's so many things that go into it, like you can go in there and have like a very boring game plan, or you're not as well spoken, or you're not like, there's something that's not really that unique about you, and this and that, and then that will sort of in a sad way, it will force you not to get paid as much. It's crazy, because now, especially in this day and age in the entertainment field and stuff like that, this is why Conor McGregor got paid so much, because he's got a unique personality. He says stuff that no one else is saying, and he goes on and smashes people at the same time. It's crazy, because you'd think us fighters would get paid more, because we're doing a hell of a lot for all people's entertainment. We're trying to conduct ourselves over a course in a massive range of different areas. You know what I mean? Like, And I think that's one thing that if it was probably any advice to any of the younger fighters as they're coming up, obviously is one thing is just to be yourself. The reason why Conor McGregor done so well is because that was just him as a person. I think people who are respectful and this and that can still be those mega stars. It's just by acting themselves. Like Jack Shaw, he's himself and everyone loves him for that. And I think it should go the same for everyone else. It seems like there's a lot of fighters that are upcoming are thinking, I've got to talk crap to get myself to the top, when what they don't realize is that that's not the blueprint for it. The blueprint really is just to be yourself, and if it's infectious for people, then it will just become like that. And you can't obviously, unfortunately, at the end of the day, not everyone's going to like you, this or that, but the point is just to make sure you are highlighting the best version of yourself to everyone else, inside the cage, outside the cage, and everywhere else. If you're a bit of a wild guy, then of course you just got to embrace that thing, and that's why then people start talking about different people. So I think that's another big factor that people sort of often neglect. As much as the fighting inside the cage is to get their pay or to get people interested, at the end of the day, it's the overall sort of package. So this is why it's so hard, to do really well in the sport and stuff like that, just because obviously there's so many different things out there, so many different people out there. It just depends what's going to stick out and resonate with people the most.
Spot on, mate. Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, so just to finish off, we're going to just go through it's UFC 7.5 is classed as it's the first ultimate, which is basically all the various winners of the previous tournaments competing in one mega tournament. We're not going to go into each fight in a massive amount of detail. We're just going to kind of talk about the general tournament match by match. I had a question set in actually, Modestas, for you just before we start that, which was if you could pick one fighter from past or present or current to be like your final ever fight, who would it be?
John Jones for the title.
What a shout!
Yeah,
retire as champion.
That could be the reality. That could be a reality.
Well, this is it. I've been thinking about this whole scenario and situation. How crazy would it be, like 2-3 years, climb my way to the top of the ladder, and John Jones is looking for his last fight or to defend his belt or whatever. He's moved up to heavyweight, but now he needs something new. And then next thing you know, the guy that used to spar with him when I was 22, and next thing you know, I'm like, I'm 28, 29, and he's going to, and it's again the past and the present. The past and the present, or whatever the future, and that would be a crazy fight. Like, I mean, I could picture that whole scene in my head all the time, and I really do hope that some point in the future that will happen, because he was literally my idol for the longest time and still is. And to turn your idols into rivals is, I think, every athlete's really dream.
Spot on. I'm going to cut that clip and put it out separate, little minute clip. Put the head in. Modestas calls out John Jones. Stir some controversy.
That's it.
Right. Okay. So first fight we'll go with the Tank Abbott in the quarterfinals. He faced Steve Jenham, won via neck crank in 1 minute and 15 seconds. Danny?
Yeah. Well, this is, we're beginning to see that weight counts. Tank Abbott's it's a real good name for him because he's built like a tank. Doesn't look the most well-conditioned of athletes, but this guy comes with intentions. He's got some wrestling capabilities. He's clearly got some hands on him, not in a beautiful, pretty way, but he's got some hands in terms of, like, he throws and he can knock you the hell out. He steamed into Steve Jenham, really made his weight count with his wrestling, got him down all too easy. Steve Jenham did look a little bit even more swift on the ground than what he previously done. I think it clearly is sharpening his tools on the ground. He had really nice hips, but nothing he was going to catch Tank Abbott with. Although Tank Abbott's not a beautician on the ground, he's a really good top wrestler. Easily pulled out of those arm bars. Steve Jenner has to negate all the way back to a closed and open guard. And in that open guard, it just got stacked and put pressure on his neck, and it was over. It didn't last very long at all. And I'm just not surprised now. The fighters are beginning to learn a skill set across the broad spectrum of the weight, and the bigger man is beginning to show through time again now.
Indeed. Anything to add for that one, Modestas?
I'm not going to lie to you guys. I mean, I've seen a couple fights, bits and bobs here and there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I haven't been able to really watch the fights in their entirety. The only thing that I'll probably add in this segment is just to say that from what I have noticed is that it's crazy to see how far the game has evolved from then to now. And, you know, even like the higher weight classes, like even from the light heavyweight, you know, everywhere was very singular martial art orientated. Everyone's like, okay, you know, there was a big thing like which martial art is the best and this and that. And it was like that for quite a long time. And then slowly but surely the MMA game started evolving. People started trying to, you know, take little things from each aspect and stuff like that. And it's crazy to think how that has sort of evolved and developed into what it is now today. And now if you look at the level of each fighter, you can't go in there with a singular approach. You have to be well versed in every aspect. I think at the same time, you still got to have a particular skill set that you are able to thrive on, because that is something that will give your opponent, like if you're able to completely overshadow them in that position, then it'll throw them off balance a little bit. But yeah, you have to be good at everything now. Whereas, you know, sort of before, one art will beat one art and this and that. But it's obviously crazy as well to see bloody 30-minute time limits. Insanity. So yeah, that's what I'll sort of pitch in for this little bit.
Yeah. What about Tank Abbott though, mate? Were you a big fan?
I've seen, like I said, I've seen bits and bobs. From what I could see, yeah, he was like a sort of very large fellow. He was just very sort of just a powerful, top heavy sort of guy. And I'm pretty sure it was one of those fights. I mean, some of the slaps that these guys are giving each other, oh my God, my ears would be ringing for days. These guys just like literally just open hand palm strike, or bang straight to the neck, straight to the neck. It even makes me cringe just looking at it. So yeah, nah, man. Like I say,
you got to remember, they do downward elbows as well back then. Downward elbows on the back of the head, neck, spine. That was all go back then.
Groin shots.
Groin shots. We've seen that. Yeah, pulling the hair as well. And they can hold the fence, which is something that we see, which we'll talk about as we skim through these fights. They tactically were holding the fence both for a top position and to prevent going to the ground. This is something that I noticed they started to learn to use the environment to their advantage in this UFC.
Indeed. Next up, Dan Severn versus Paul Valerian. Is this the one you couldn't find?
Yeah, I tried to find it and I just could not find it. Did you manage to get hold of it? Did you?
I've seen the finish of it. Basically, Dan Severn gets his arm triangle choke on Paul Valerian in just under a minute.
Yeah,
it's pretty much
not surprised.
Every Dan Severn bout you've seen so far, he kind of just throws him around and chokes him out.
Yeah.
Next up was Marco Ruas, who was very impressive in the last week's show, versus Keith Hackney, which Ruas won via rear naked choke after 2.5 minutes.
So I remember seeing this years and years and years ago, so I can't remember all of it, but I think he picks him up belly to belly almost and just picks him up and slams him down, being bigger than Keith Hackney. He doesn't mix it with the striking from what I remember. You know, Keith Hackney clearly aggressive on the feet. From what I remember, Michael Ruas engages with a body lock. He picks him up, he slams him down, and then quickly deals with him on the ground. Keith Hackney's not a ground guy by any stretch, and I think he got showing up as that. You could see that this guy, Michael Ruas was a well-rounded guy and clearly good on the ground, and Keith Hackney had no answers for him.
Yeah. Next up was the Oleg Taktarov versus David Benatar. Obviously, last week it was the first time where I think we saw Taktarov look a little bit vulnerable. When he faced Ken Shamrock, he looked in a bit of trouble at certain points.
Yeah.
what did you make of this one, or just take us like through the?
Yeah. It wasn't a super long fight. That Dave was the bigger guy. He's the better wrestler of the two. I'm just trying to remember. I can't find where what did I put in my notes here? Can't find where I put that one.
So
Did I not write that one down? Yeah, I'm just trying to. I know he got to the ground. He submitted him quite quickly, didn't he?
Yeah, he got him in his hold, and
why have I not written down the finish?
But
Yeah. He rolled for an E-bar, didn't he?
Yeah.
He dived underneath. You see, I started to see that Oleg was starting to counter people's superior wrestling with this dive roll for an E-bar, which become a bit of a theme of his game throughout this UFC. He did the same to Dave. Really, really slick, hunting for those legs. He's clearly a leg lock specialist, and that came to light in this bout and continued throughout the rest of the UFC. This is something he's obviously been training for.
Yes, I think so. And then we obviously go to the semi-finals. Modestas, are you familiar with Oleg Takturov or not?
Do you know what? I remember seeing that name pop up. I had my old PS1, and I had like I think like a UFC game, like proper old. I had like all like Gary Goodridge, had like all like the old fighters and stuff like that. And I think he was actually one of the fighters that was on that game. From what I've been seeing, he's quite an imposing character, like quite large. Again, like I say, I haven't really seen too many fights. It's crazy because nowadays, like, you know, with my sort of obsession with being ahead of the game, I'm always looking at modern fights or the fighters that I'm going to be fighting as opposed to the older fights. But I guess that's something that I probably need to look into more because from what I can listen to you guys saying, it's pretty interesting.
I just find it fascinating going, like we started with UFC 1, and as we've gone on each week, you see some fighters improving, some not so much. It's definitely compared to that first week, it was not, it was interesting to watch, and you saw some brutal strikes and things like this, but Royce Gracie basically just tapped everyone out pretty simply because no one knew how no one had any ability on the ground. But as the shows have gone on each week, you just seeing people have got more and more ability to defend themselves in the grapple. Then makes people like Royce Gracie less. I wouldn't say less effective because he's still one of the best ever, but he's not able to just take someone down and beat them in seconds because they're able to do other stuff, which brings in their striking. Okay, so the semi-final, we had Dan Severn versus Tank Abbott, which I was very, very much looking forward to seeing which way it went. It went to unanimous decision. So this is the first time that they had the judges giving the decisions, and both semi-finals and the final all went to decision. So in the semi-finals, it was an 18-minute match, and then the final was a 30-minute match. So very quickly, Dan, just take us through kind of your thoughts.
Yeah, Dan Severn and Tank Abbott, this is one that I was kind of intrigued how it would go. Dan Severn's a more decorated wrestler, although Tank Abbott is no slouch with the wrestling. Dan Severn's a big guy, but this is where I noticed Dan was evolving about what the cage fighting was all about. He was much more aggressive on top in ground and pound on top of Tank, so he did take Tank Abbott down. He out-wrestled him as I thought he might. And Tank Abbott was kind of stuck flat down on his belly. He was just getting out-wrestled. Dan Severn was using an ankle pick control from the turtle position, so Tank Abbott couldn't stand back to his feet, and he was landing really aggressive downward elbows. He was using the fence to hold on to put more ground and pound power down. It really used the cage well in his favor. He gripped the cage right at the right times to fix Tank Abbott in against that fence, and Tank Abbott really struggled. And this was really what happened throughout their bout. Really, he was just getting out wrestled and out grappled. It kind of looked like a wrestle match with strikes. That's the only way I can describe it. They weren't performing jiu-jitsu, but they were just wrestling, like two kids scrapping on the floor. But Dan Severn clearly was the more evolved and the more athletic. And so, although I think Tank showed a lot of resilience and a lot of desire to try and find a way to come back and win, he would swing and get taken down again. And Dan was just too good a wrestler.
Yes, I think it was like kids rolling around, wasn't it? Oleg Taktarov and Marco Ruiz, and then also take us through the final then between Dan Severn and Taktarov as well.
With Marco Ruiz and Taktarov, they had a bit of a rivalry between them, these two. To me, it always looked like Marco Ruiz was perhaps better on the feet. But Michael Ruiz started trying to sit behind just a leg kick. But as the bout went on, he was getting more and more tired with the leg kick and was unable to continue to be effective. For me, Oleg Taktarov was just being more diverse in his attacks. He tried rolling knee bars. But as people will know, with Michael Ruiz, who was pretty accomplished on the ground as well, was able to resist any of the submissions, but nevertheless was the one having to defend the diverse of attacks. And when on the feet, Oleg was going in with slightly more hands than what Michael Ruiz was. Michael Ruiz just seemed to struggle with the cardio. Although he looks like a really well-conditioned athlete, he just seemed to be struggling at it. And it was really just trying to rely on trying to kick the leg off of Oleg. It didn't happen. As his energy began to wane, Oleg started not having to worry about the leg kick so much and started to try to do the knee bar roll again, worked briefly on the ground back up to the feet. And the judges gave it in favour of Oleg, and I think rightly so.
Indeed. So what do we have? Yeah. So the final then was Dan Severn and Taktarov. And
Again, Oleg knew that he was going to get out wrestled. He knew he was the smaller of the two guys. Although Oleg is not a small man, we all know the beast Dan Severn is a big guy. He does a lovely rolling knee bar yet again. He kind of gives up his back standing, dives and so nearly gets Dan's leg out straight. But Dan managed to defend the leg position well enough. He gets on top. And from there, he kind of just mauls Oleg. He's just too big for Oleg. And now just getting too seasoned in the cage. He just looked like someone who's been in there and now knows how to make his weight advantage and his wrestling skill count for every minute that's in there. Oleg was just, I wouldn't say outclassed, but just outgunned through sheer size. I think it really become apparent that big wrestlers were kind of like the stick in the spokes of a rotating wheel. It kind of screws up all martial arts. It was kind of like undoing the mystique of jiu-jitsu. If there were bigger wrestlers, they was able to defend against the submission attempts of a smaller jiu-jitsu guy enough to get the ground and pound off, and they was able to take down any striker if they wasn't versed in wrestling arts. So wrestling was really putting itself on the page as a surprise, to be so effective against all the other martial arts systems.
Yeah, for sure. It's this wasn't my favorite one we've watched so far, but it wasn't the worst either. So next week we're going to be talking UFC 8, which is David versus Goliath, which will be interesting. We've got some familiar names joining us with a super fight championship of Ken Shamrock versus Kimo Leopoldo.
I remember that fight. That was actually a good fight. I remember this one from back along.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. Obviously, we'll have we got Don Fry making his debut as well.
Good old Don Fry. Legend.
Some real familiar names starting to come into it now. And of course we'll have the usual the current UFC, which will be on the Saturday night, and we'll take our next look into the rise of Jack Shaw, which I believe is I've lost the page now, but I've got a link. I found the link for the fight because it's actually a Cage Warriors Academy show. But the fight's on YouTube anyway, so that's fine. And yeah, so the next time you will see us, guys, is Friday, 6 p.m. live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Join us, myself, Danny, and Jack Shaw will be breaking down the Wednesday show, which is, anyone know what the main event is for Wednesday? Professionals.
Oh, crikey. There's been so many that's suddenly been going on.
I know they're so close
They're
together
pumping
as
them out.
well.
Yeah, but it's been great. I mean, we've all been starved of events, and to have like 2 a week, it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not sure my wife agrees with you, but I had like 8 hours of UFC to watch today in total or something stupid, and it was like, yeah. But no, it's been fun. It's been good. The live show on Thursday last week was really well received. We had a good few thousand views on Facebook and stuff, and people got involved in that. So it's a good start. I like that, and we'll keep doing those live shows and have some guest analysis people to help us along as well, because it's good to have some different views.
Sure.
Modestas, thank you so much for joining us for the full show. See, no jumping out after an hour like Brett Johns. Brett bloody did the current stuff and off he went.
Yeah, his missus come in, wasn't it? And give him a frown
for work.
And he's like, yeah, I've got a chip, guys.
Well,
we know
thank you so much.
She's an
NHS
NHS worker. She's an NHS worker, so we'll let him off. But yeah, no, thank you, Modestas, for joining us for the full show. Appreciate it, my friend. And tell the people where they can find you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure, mate. Tell the people where they can find you, mate.
Yes. Yeah, so Modestas Bukauskas on Facebook. Might as well just spell it out. Modestas and then Bukauskas. And then on Instagram, which is probably my most prominent sort of social media, is MODYB24. And then on Twitter, it's MODESTAS BUKAUS1. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Can't get no numbers now because I've got a girlfriend, but yeah. So if anyone was sort of
if anyone's seen the Take Me Out video,
well, I can tell you my girlfriend has, and she wasn't impressed.
Modestas, don't your dad do personal training as well, or not? Does he do personal training?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, I did.
I believe if you go to.
Sorry, I think we got a bit of a lag on the talking. Carry on.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Sorry. Yeah, so I believe if you type in Gintas Combat on Google, or if you even just type in my dad's name is Gintas Bukauskas, so GINTAS, you'll be able to find it and basically message if you are interested in doing privates. But he's obviously very well versed. He's my head coach. Works very greatly alongside Danny in the corner. Has probably given me the best advice possible. But every single fight these guys have been together has led me to victory, which has been amazing.
I did touch on your dad, but I don't think I actually mentioned his name. But Gintas his pad holding is second to none. I've never seen pad holding like it and combinations like it. Obviously, I train with Modestas a lot, but I'm more there to do his wrestling strategies and grappling strategies. The only real striking side of the coaching I have anything to do with is when he's sparring full MMA, and I try and help him disengage or engage with the wrestling depending on what strategy you want to play out with in any particular day. But Gintas predominantly does all of Modestas' striking, and my God, it's quite something. So if people want to experience it, you can get training with Gintas. You would not be disappointed.
There you go. Guys, you can't find Danny on any social media because he's not on any of them. So check out BST Academy, bstacademy.co.uk. Check out Away Day Apparel, awaydayapparel.co.uk. You can also use the code AA Podcast Nation, all in lowercase, and get 10% off all your orders. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. And we'll see you for the live show next week, or the end of this week as it goes out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. Best way to support the channel and all the series, including this one. And you can, of course, find the audio versions, usual places. We're on Twitter and Instagram at acecast_nation, as you'll see just under my pretty face, and facebook.com/acecastnation. Danny, Modestas, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it immensely. And we'll see you all next week. Cheers.
Thanks.
Welcome.